Now, a school in Glasgow is taking an unconventional route in its battle to lure pupils away from fast food by creating an American-style dinner within the school gates. Pupils will be able to dine on barbecue chicken, quesadillas and burritos, all conforming to Scottish Government nutritional legislation. So the question is, could this be an effective way of controlling kids' calories?
Joining us to discuss this is the dietitian and nutritionist Nicole Berberian and the parenting journalist Liat Hughes-Joshi. Thank you both for joining us. Nicole, if I can start with you, this seems like a pretty good idea, doesn't it? Stopping kids going round to the chippy next door. If the food conforms to the nutritional guidelines, no problem.
It sounds wonderful. From the nutritional point of view, what we're trying to do is to obviously provide the best food that we can within the budget constraints. And if this stops the children going out of the school grounds where we really don't know what they might be choosing, keeping them in and encouraging them to make the good food choices. And because this diner is actually conforming to the Scottish food nutritional guidelines and the food standards, the idea is that even this food, although it's presented in a more fun way, is going to actually be better.
We should point out that Holyrood in Glasgow is a state school. It's not a public school. So lots of people will be wondering how on earth they were able to afford the faux red leather seats and the black and white tiled floor and all the bits and bobs that go with it. I wonder if there are going to be some people, Liat, who are watching this who think, is this a little bit over the top? This is a school, you know, is this really what we should be spending our money on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I saw the photos and the video of this new diner, my first thought was, my goodness, this is a school and not a theme park. Is this really necessary to keep children from going to the local fried chicken shop and other fast food outlets? And I know that is a problem with teenagers in secondary schools, but there are other ways to deal with that which would be cheaper. I mean, I don't know how this school has financed this, and it could be the catering provider has paid for it. But if that isn't the case particularly, I would be looking and thinking, well, wouldn't it be an awful lot cheaper to just have a rule saying you are not allowed to leave school premises, or you're not allowed to go to the local fast food outlets? Now, that obviously requires a little bit of policing, but spot checks, for example, other schools do it, and that's the point. And this raises the game and ups the ante to quite a ridiculous level, if you ask me.
The operations manager for the school has said that there are 2,000 pupils on the school roll. They don't have the capacity in the dining room from the roll to stay in, so they've had to look at alternative areas. So perhaps there was a budget to do something, and this is just what they've decided to do. Nicole, is Liat correct that this is just far too over the top?
Unfortunately, we've come to a place in time where choice is where it's all about. Take us back 50 years. There was no choice in schools. You ate what you were given. The food was generally much more home-cooked, less fast food orientated. So now that we've come to an era of choice, we kind of opened up a whole can of worms. So within that, we've then got to say, right, if we're giving choice, how can we do it so that they choose to stay in? If they're choosing to stay on, it has to be good. The other thing to say is, once they've opened up this diner and they're providing these foods, there's nothing to say they can't then map those same foods out into the main canteen. So almost once they've got the children used to staying in, they could have the same menu running in their main canteen.
I know they have to conform to the guidelines, but are these the best things to be feeding children, to stop them going to the chip shop, to give them quesadillas, chili dogs, mac and cheese and burritos? I know they will conform to the guidelines, but surely it's not a healthy option. Well,
if they've made them healthy, there's so many ways to make what looks like a more exciting dish healthy. So that's the idea, that they're going to try and do it with these foods. As I said, if they can get that right, if they can get the formula of those foods right, so they really are still healthy, they can then replicate that in the main school diner.
Is there also an argument to be made for this being a little bit nanny state-ish, in that they're taking choice away from young people who, once they leave school, are going to be faced with temptations and have to learn what's healthy and what's not? And surely the school should be teaching them, don't be eating fast food, you need to be having a nice, healthy, nutritional, balanced diet, rather than, you know, just laying it all on for them.
I think there's something around teenagers, though, who, you know, they are just particularly tempted by fried chicken shops and the like, and it becomes a thing that they go out at lunchtime and
more
spend
social,
their
though.
money. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a peer influence to it as well, and that maybe that dissipates a bit when you reach your 20s and 30s. But you know, I think that there's a sort of overall pandering going on here and a culture in our society of trying to make everything so very, very exciting for children. And really, wouldn't a perfectly pleasant, normal canteen, which is bright and appealing, be enough? I just don't see the need to make a school restaurant into a flash diner.
There is an obesity crisis amongst young people in this country, though, so is there perhaps an argument for no matter what it is, if it's helping, it's good?
Yeah.
Further down the line, the knock-on effects of what they could potentially cost the NHS through being obese, maybe.
We have to tackle from all angles. I mean, this is really very much what I'm always dealing with out there with my patients. I'm looking at what happens to these children in the next 10 years. These are the people that we then take on board as a burden with their health issues. So yes, we have to tackle it here. And unfortunately, we have gone into a society now where people do eat out all the time. They are eating in canteens, and it's likely that this is what they will be doing in the future. Certainly as a mother, I've got grown-up children, and the rate of eating out amongst the 20-year-olds is far higher than it was 30 years ago. So therefore, we need to look at, right across the board, making all canteen food healthy, and that's the initiative for restaurants as well.
But I think that, you know, it's one thing to make canteen food healthy, and it's quite another to spend a fortune turning it into a diner and upping the ante. And I do find it really over the top, and I still just think have a rule that stops the kids going out at lunchtime or stops them going to
Kids
a
don't
chicken
like
shop.
rules, though.
But there are rules in life, and they're going to have to deal with them in the workplace, for example.
Yeah, Leah Hughes-Joshi, Nicole Berberian, thanks very much for getting that debate going for us. I'm sure it'll continue on Twitter. Do let us know your views this morning, because a lot of people obviously will share the concerns. I think I'm a bit old school. I think I'd say there should be rules to stay in. But anyway, that's me.